Hi everyone, I'm Jo Sparrow, President of Jigsaw Queensland and host of the Adopt Perspective podcast. Today I'm joined by Helen Harrison, an adopted person from New Zealand who now lives in Brisbane. Helen's story spans identity, loss, resilience, and ultimately a deep commitment to emotional well-being and self-trust. Helen grew up in a large, multicultural adoptive family and from early on carried a sense of not quite knowing where she belonged. Over time, that led her on a journey through reunion, grief, motherhood, relationship breakdown, and profound personal loss that has shaped the work that she does today, supporting others and to feel safe within themselves. Thank you so much for being here, Helen.
Fantastic to be here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
I'd love to start with your childhood. It was so different, and might mention right at the start that Helen wrote a book about her experience, which I read prior to doing this interview, and it's quite a remarkable story. So can you start by sort of telling us a little bit about the family that you grew up in and what it felt like for you to be a part of that family?
So in my family, there's 10 children, including me. So the 3 oldest were biological and then 7 were adopted from all countries around the world. So a number of different cultures. And so for me as a young girl, I do have a lot of memories of playing because there was always a lot of siblings to play with, and being outdoors a lot. And also we would have family meetings. It was either to get a new kid or to move house because every time we had a kid, the house wasn't big enough. So my younger years, I do feel a warmth and a softness around that. It was more when I was going more into teenage years when like the worry part of my brain started up, and then things really began to change because this is where, you compare yourself and compare other families. So that's where it started to become difficult for me.
Yeah. In what kinds of ways, what sorts of things, the dynamics and things happening at home that sort of made you feel that way?
So it was a difficult environment in that there was a real scarcity type mindset that my parents brought into the equation. My parents are English, so they were brought up in the war. It was sort of survival. And so that came through in every element of my childhood, from just feeling not warm enough, like winters in New Zealand are quite cold. And I remember just wanting a jacket. And then in my bed, I just wanted warm doona and I wanted heating. And so there was that element. Also food. There was a scarcity of food. Like I was always hungry. So going to sleep at night hungry is a really difficult thing, but also scarcity around emotion, touch, connection, love. So it was a real theme of survival, privation. So yeah, it was difficult. And look, it had good times as well. Not saying it was all difficult, but I do remember a lot of it was just trying to work out where my next feed was coming from and to be good, to not lose meals. Yeah.
And it was a very multicultural home. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So the different cultures, Indian, Samoan, Maori, Tongan. I'm Scottish, English descent, Maori and English. So yes, quite a few different cultures. I remember 2 specific times, 8 years old, coming home from school and I had a new brother. I didn't even know we were getting a new brother. So that just, how do you even begin to process? And then I remember at 14, we did have a meeting around that one. And me and my siblings were trying to guess, okay, is it going to be moving house or is it going to be a new kid? And I thought it's got to be moving house. Well, it wasn't. It was my youngest brother. So I remember, again, coming home, it was Rangers, Brownies, Girl Guides and Rangers in New Zealand. I remember coming home, I think it was from Girl Guides, and walking into the lounge room and there was my new brother. So yeah, how do you even process that? Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been really challenging because I can remember how much stability meant to me as a child, like knowing what was going on, knowing what was happening at all times was very important to me. And I can't even actually imagine what it'd be like to have been in a home where everything was constantly changing like that. Big things, not little things.
Yes. And that is so true. And this is why, I've called my business Power of Change because I could never do change. I always had anxiety. I was sort of observing, hypervigilant because it would change. And that, yes, as an adoptee, you need to feel safe. But, the pecking order would change and we would get another, I can bring humour to it now, but at the time it was very, very difficult and really no resources or someone to talk to about it. My friends weren't living this. They didn't get a new sibling, and had to sort of maneuver their way through that. So yes, it wasn't easy. Wasn't easy.
Yeah. So why do you think your adoptive parents wanted to adopt and to keep adopting children?
This was a question I asked my mother numerous times, and she said it's very much, um, she wanted to do this for children. But what happened, I think, towards the end, back in New Zealand, I know it wouldn't happen now, but the social workers back then would call my parents and ask them, look, we've got this child we can't place, particularly in the Samoan culture, the Maori culture, auntie, uncles will take on, but not in this case. So I don't know. All I do recall, and this is just my take to it, and my mum and dad are no longer with me. They've passed on. But for my mother, I do wonder, because I do have fond memories of being very much held and loved and nurtured when I was little. And then it's like something miraculously happened when I started at school, because then we get a new kid and the attention will go to that one, and I was sort of left to my own devices. So I get a sense that she was very loving with babies, but then these babies, and this is just my perception, these babies then would grow up and start to have a voice and start to want to comment about things. And look, my father, he was just very supportive of my mother. Was he on board? Absolutely. I mean, he provided for 10 children. They lived on one wage. It's pretty incredible what they did. But I'll never fully know the answer. I think they very much did think, what would happen to these children if they don't get adopted? But if I just take it a little step further, the enormity of what they took on. I've got 3 adult sons. I could not imagine adopting 7 children from 7 cultures on top of the 3 that
Yeah.
I had. Yeah, I just couldn't even imagine. I mean, the feat of what they did was.
I actually think there'd be lots of nodding heads listening to you. I kind of felt the same about my adoptive mother, that where she got something very much out of raising babies, and then once those babies became someone with a mind of their own and ideas of their own, she struggled and was very challenged by that. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's a lot of nodding heads out there who had a similar experience.
Yes.
So something you wrote about, which was very interesting to me, was learning how to shape shift and to become who you thought you needed to be. Can you share what that looked like for you growing up?
Yes, I was marvelous at it. So my parents are English. They're quite introverted and quite quiet. I'm not introverted and I'm not quiet, but I sort of adjusted myself. I was constantly reading, particularly my mother's energy, as to how much of me I could let out. And I remember I worked in a garden centre at 14, which I believe now, they became like my surrogate family. I could be me in that garden centre. And it sort of got me pondering, why am I so different in my work environment, yet I come home and I get back into my box as such, into place. And I look now, the fear of rejection was just, I lived and breathed it. I was constantly seeking my mother's approval and would be constantly adjusting myself to get her approval and please her, that ultimate pleaser. So had no idea who I was. I remember years ago I went to a personal development workshop, and the facilitator, she named us. So she put stickers on our forehead, and you know what she called me?
What did she call you?
She called me a chameleon. She
Yeah.
saw me. That's when I was training as a holistic counselor. Like, she saw me. She saw right through me. And I thought, wow, she sees it. It was like my little secret. Yeah, it was quite confronting. But you do what you can, don't you, to be loved? And that is exactly what I did.
Yeah. I think adopted
Yeah.
people are great chameleons, I think, in order
Yes.
to survive and be safe. And safety means not being rejected, as you said, not being abandoned. So,
Yeah.
yeah, blending in. Yeah.
Yeah.
When your sister Lily was adopted, it was fascinating to me how you got to watch her experience, and you felt she experienced grief, and it helped you to understand the loss that has to occur for an adoption to happen. Can you tell
Yeah.
us about that?
I can remember it was like yesterday. So I remember, coming home from Girl Guides, and there she was, the most gorgeous little baby. She had black, tight little curls, and she was like this little koala bear, and the beautiful almond eyes, that Samoan culture. And for me, it was a soul connection with Lily. I just connected from the moment I met her, and absolutely adored her. But I remember, I don't know how many weeks it was, but she would sob at night, like she would cry, and it did not matter what my parents did to try and console her. And I just remember lying in bed thinking, they've just got to give her back. She's just got to go back. She's not meant to be here. Like, how does a 10-year-old know that, But I do remember that. Of course, in time, it got less and stopped, but it was a cry that I'll always remember. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think so many of us struggle to name the feelings going on inside of us, to acknowledge that they're there.
Yeah.
But being that little bit older and getting to watch it through your eyes of seeing someone else come into the family and experience what you'd experienced really did give you an insight, I think, early, which, as terribly sad as that was perhaps also helpful in some ways for you, for your own experience.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So growing up in a big house with lots of kids, when you left home at 18, you kind of had the feeling that was expected, like you're 18, it's time to move on. And not long after that, you began searching for your origins. What was driving that decision for you at that age?
So it was like just something inside me. I was looking. I felt so disconnected from myself. And so in my head, I thought, well, if I find my biological mother, I'll find me. And so at 18, I thought, right, I'm going to begin this journey. Yeah, I mean, I think I applied just before I left home. I went off to uni to Palmerston North, did a diploma in horticulture because I love nature and I thought that goes together. But from there, that's right. And what was the question?
What was driving your decision to look for your biological roots?
I think it would be pretty fair to say that for a lot of adoptees, there's this inner drive. Something was missing. I can now say I didn't feel whole. There was a part of me, So growing up, looking out, there was no one who looked like me, talked like me, acted like me. We're all different colours, different shapes, different sizes. Where am I in all the mix of it? So I was a bit of a lost soul, and I did suffer a lot with anxiety and real low moods. So for me, it was right. If I can start finding where I come from, that might help.
Yeah. What were you hoping you might find?
I thought that if I found particularly my biological mother, then I would get more answers to understand myself and what that looks like. I take myself, I've grown so much from that time, but I take myself back to that. Yeah, I was very lost. And I thought if I found her, then that would give me some answers to my inner self. Why I did what I did and how I acted and how I showed up in the world. Yeah.
That's really interesting you're just naming that, because I think so often it's thought when we go searching for our biological relatives, we're looking for connection, for a mother to be our mother again. And that's part of it. There is that element in it. But I think more often than not, we're looking for answers to ourselves to figure out who we are. And it's just one of the things we try and stuff into that hole to try and figure out.
Yes, absolutely.
So what did you discover when you applied for your identifying information?
Yes, so a veto had been put on my information. And so a veto goes on it for 10 years. And I was at I think 8 or 9 years I had to wait. So it had just gone on. And so that meant I couldn't find her name. I could find out unidentifying information, which I did. And that meant a birth certificate was sent with no details on it. But I just had to wait. So I had to wait till I was 28 before I could get my, original birth certificate. So that was pretty devastating. It's really hard to put myself back in that space, but I was devastated.
Yeah, you would be. Yeah, that would be a huge impact.
It was. It was like loss again, grief again, rejection again. So it was just this, Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body. Well, I had a mighty big one, and I just sort of sit in it. Yeah, it was very, very painful. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you interpret it? Did you interpret it as rejection or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was rejection, at birth, which on some level I can understand. But back then, I mean, my thinking is very different now, but back then, so at 18, it was, no, I'm beginning of adulthood and this is going to give me some direction and some answers and, fill me with a knowing of who I am. But it obviously wasn't going to be an easy journey. So, no, that wasn't the case.
So you got the news of the veto, which essentially blocked you from searching. What did you do next?
I just sort of got on with living. I moved from, because I was going to go on a working holiday to England to find my biological mother. So I got the information when I was in Australia. So then I sort of just took it on and got on with life. So arrived in Sydney, stayed there. I moved to Perth, advertised for a flatmate, now ex-husband, but I was with this man for 30 years, met him, we made a life, moved up to Darwin. So I just got on with living. I had to let it go and know that at 28, I will then open it up again. But was it easy? No. I had very dark days, weeks actually, where I write about it in my book, my comfy couch. I would sort of sit in my comfy couch. It wasn't comfy. It was black. It was oozy. And I now know that to be victim and trauma, but it was extremely painful. So it was almost like I was waiting for 28. Then I'll get my answers. So I just, got on with living.
Did your adoptive family keep in touch with you after you moved to Australia?
Yes. I mean, it was me. I'm the one. If it wasn't for me, I probably would hardly have heard from them. So it was me. I had a lot of guilt leaving my siblings. So for many years, I would send presents, big boxes at Christmas and birthday. I felt enormous guilt for leaving my younger siblings. That stayed with me for a very long time. That was very painful. But I was always reaching out to them and contacting them, and then travelled back to New Zealand every year, every 18 months for 30-something years. Yeah. So I'm the one who kept that consistent connection.
I often think of adoption as like a bit of, one of those cardiologist blip kind of monitors in the hospital in my life where
Ye-
if I look back on it, I can see where it's spiked and raised its ugly head in my life and other times where it's been a bit, less interesting for me.
Yes.
The impact of adoption for me became something I couldn't ignore when I had my first son. You married and went on to have 3 sons. How did the impact of motherhood and experience of motherhood impact on your experience of being adopted?
If I had known, I perhaps would have done things very differently. It affected me deeply, deeply, particularly when I had my first son. It wasn't an easy birth, so that certainly didn't help. But there was a part of me that was terrified of bonding with him, and I could feel it. Why? Because I was so terrified of letting love in. I was so terrified that he may leave. So we'll just keep him back there. Really had to really work at that because I absolutely adored him. So not understanding, the whole primal wound and all of my trauma was getting triggered. And I found motherhood extremely difficult. At times I didn't enjoy it. I found it really, really hard because I was constantly triggered. 3 boys. I was blessed with 3 loud, big characters. And it was very, very testing. All 3 of them were so different. But I mean, they've been the biggest gift, particularly, if you're adopted and you have no one biologically like that and you have your first child, it's incredibly emotional, deeply. I can't even really find the words, it's an experience that touches on just so many different parts of yourself. I wasn't prepared for motherhood. I was a child having a baby. I wasn't able to emotionally regulate my emotions at all. I wasn't embodied. I wasn't in my body. So I was very, very reactive. So any time, as much as my firstborn, he was like an old soul, a lot of wisdom. It's almost like he grounded me. And then my second one came along, who was full of life and filled with things that he needed some support with. So again, that took me to another level, but constantly triggered when they were younger. But, that wasn't their fault. That was all my unhealed wounds that I had not looked at, but hadn't clicked that, the fact that I was adopted was creating all of this.
Yeah. Just as a mother of sons, we've both only got boys. I remember I really wanted a daughter for a long time. And now I look back and I go, thank goodness I didn't get one, because I'm not sure if they would have been as forgiving of me as a parent. And also I might not have been able to separate my experience from them. I might have been overlaying something even harder on a girl. Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, totally agree with you. I was desperate for a girl because, I had the fantasy of the mother-daughter relationship. And there's no mistakes. I was blessed with 3 sons for an absolute reason, because if I'd had a daughter, I would have dumped all my stuff on her, had an expectation of how I thought it should be. I would have been very controlling. And no. The universe certainly had a different path for me, and am so very grateful. It's
So you turned 28 and the veto prohibiting your access to identifying information was lifted. You applied and you got your information. What did you discover?
Yes, I'll never forget it. Post office, not for a moment thinking I wouldn't get this great letter. Well, initially, so I got the birth certificate and her name was on there, and it was like, wow, this is fantastic. I actually did get on the phone. Actually, no, I've jumped. So got my birth certificate. I then contacted the adoption agency, back in New Zealand, and they found me her details, and I wrote to her and just told her all about my life, and, very uplifting letter, not for a moment thinking that she wouldn't, be appreciative of that. And it was quite quickly, I think it was about 14 days later or something along that line, I got a letter from her. So this is the first time I've had contact with my biological mother, and I saw her writing, and I sort of rip open the envelope to put even into words. You are in my past, and that's where I'm going to keep you. And
Wow.
that couldn't have cut any deeper. Now, I can say it now as it's something that's happened, because I've had to do years and years and years of inner work through that, because I couldn't get my head around, okay, I get it when you're a baby, but I'm 28 years old now, I'm an adult. So she went on to, it was a nice letter. She described, in a bit of detail, that I had 2 sisters. What is quite interesting is she had me. She was from England and she was a teacher. She had fell in love with a married man, found out she was pregnant, the relationship finished. And so she had me and then put me up for adoption. And within 4 years, she was then married and had 2 other children. But then her husband, he passed away. So she actually ended up raising these children on her own, which is quite interesting. So for me, after that, I thought, I'm not someone who sort of lies down. I have found that out about myself. I'm quite a determined individual. And so I thought, okay, if I can't find my biological mother, I'll then my sisters. So I went through the phone book and started ringing. It's a very unusual surname. So the first name, the lady go, yes, I know your mother. And yes, I knew that she had a child. She was delightful. So it was the first person who had ever actually acknowledged. So this woman who I had never met, didn't know me. I just sobbed on the phone. She was beautiful. But anyway, I then contacted the next one on the phone was a sister. She thought I was after grandma's money because grandma had just passed. Anyway, we did end up connecting. And that was back in 2008. Nothing really since then. It's been the odd email. She wasn't able to go any further. Anyway, I've sort of jumped ahead. But yeah, that was devastating. I say it very easily now because I'm saying it without the emotion. But it was like a double whammy. I had not prepared myself. And I think it's organisations like you that perhaps I should have linked with to prepare myself that perhaps She might not want to have anything to do with me, which is her right, and I get that now. But 28-year-old Helen didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't much around back in the day when we were all searching and making
Yes.
these connections. There really wasn't. And even I think it is great and it is good if you do prepare yourself and you think these things through and think of what options might happen so that you can prepare yourself. But at the end of the day, it's only so much preparing you can do, and loss is still going to hit, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your life has been impacted by so much profound loss, including the suicide of your brother, Owen, and then later your sister, Lily, who we spoke about before. How have those losses impacted on you?
Massively. So when Owen passed, I was 20, he was 19. I was in Australia, and got the call that Owen had taken his life. So um, I did not know how to deal with that. Look, I hopped on a plane. So I was living in Perth at the time. I hopped on a plane and came back for the funeral. Then I came back to Australia and I put it in a box and I put it away. Couldn't even go there. I had no idea how to process it. So there's only 18 months between me and Owen. He was my mate growing up. We'd sort of play together. We'd walk to school together. So for me, and that was my first loss, incomprehensible. So with that, it started to come out as anger. So my oldest, he was 8 at the time, and I had so much anger in my body. I was talking about how I couldn't emotionally regulate. Well, it got to a point, he was 8, my oldest, where just so much screaming anger that he'd cop. And I reached a point where I thought, I really need to do something about this. So that's when I reached out, and that's where my journey began. I sort of got hooked very, very quickly working with this particular counsellor, where I thought, wow, I can actually shift how I feel inside. So, we had to start unpacking that. And because, it was such a long length of time, I wasn't unpacking it till in my late 30s, and it happened when, I was 20. It's a long time to hold a box of pain inside your body. So yeah, that also is where my career started, because I thought, wow, okay, I'm not going to work with friends or family, but I can help other people. So that's where the seed got planted, was there's so much value in looking at your stuff.
Mm.
And I've never looked back. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved in your book and just talking to you that you highlight is that adoption can impact on all of our relationships. It's not just the ones in our adoptive family or biological families, but all of the subsequent relationships that we make, friendships, partners, children, all of them. And you reflected on choosing security over intimacy in relationships. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when I met my husband, so now ex-husband, it was very much, he saw me. He wanted to look after me. And so I was very young. I was in another country. I had all my trauma adoption stuff coming up. And he was someone who loved me, and, I loved him. So it was a relationship. He was quite a bit older than me, so he was much more worldly, and it was great. It met the needs that I needed at that time. But then as I developed and as I grew, I started what I'd realized is I was living a similar life to what I lived as a child, very much conforming, hypervigilant, people pleasing, just trying to keep the peace. But security was so important to me, and that feeling of safety. So I was in my long-term marriage for quite a few years longer than perhaps healthy. Yeah, due to security. Yeah, and that picture that I had of what security was, and just, keeping my nervous system calm and everything has its order in place. Yeah.
No, I totally identify with that. I think I was always looking for stability in people. Anyone I surround myself in an intimate circle has to be a stable character, because I don't cope well with unstable characters.
Yes, and just adding on that, I also, if we go to friendships, I recognized, particularly in my 40s, that all of my friendships were mother figures. I had taken on mother figures. And it was all very unconscious. But when you start waking up and you really start looking at your work, you begin to see it through different eyes, I found it very difficult to have friendships, because I was so terrified. My whole theme through my adult life, not now, but up till quite recently, has been rejection, abandonment. And do I feel safe with you? And if there's any chance that, you could reject me, well, I'm out, you know? Yeah, that hypervigilant. I used to think I was really gifted because I could read energy. I wasn't gifted. I could read energy because I'd come from trauma and, you just got to read it all.
Yeah.
So great not to have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So good.
That's really interesting. I remember writing years ago that I felt like a sea anemone, like had little feelers out that were feeling and
Yeah.
sensing everything
Yeah.
all the time. I didn't know, I hadn't heard the word hypervigilance back then, and how tiring that is, how completely tiring it is to always be scanning for danger and not even know you're doing it.
Yes, for many years, particularly when my boys were young, I had like a walk-in wardrobe and I would take time out in the middle of the day in the dark room and lie on the floor just to re-energize myself. I know there's HSP, highly sensitive people, about 25% of the population. It's due to trauma. It's like I had to recharge myself back up, particularly if I've gone to the shops. Like if I've gone to the shops, my goodness, and taking all the sons with me, I'd be shattered because I'm constantly reading the energy and it's so draining and so taxing on the body, the nervous system. Yeah.
You also wrote about having grappled with addictions at different points in your life, different types of addictions. Can I ask if you're comfortable what types of addiction they were and how did they manifest in your life?
Yeah, look, there was the general ones around coffee and sugar and alcohol. There's one I don't want to mention, but the biggest one is a shopping addiction. Now, that started at 14. So at 14, I got my part-time job, at the garden centre. So I could start buying things, like I could buy a pair of jeans, I could buy a pair of boots. This was a whole different world because growing up, we didn't have many clothes. I sort of had an outfit for the week and a, school uniform for the week, one, and then an outfit on the weekend. So for me, this whole new world of being able to buy clothes. And so now I know how the pattern locked in. But if I was feeling a bit low or a bit numb because I didn't know how to process my emotions, I just knew I was sad, I would shop and it would make me feel good. But I kept that going right up into my late 40s to the point, particularly in my marriage, particularly towards the end as the marriage was unraveling and I was feeling really unhappy. I'd shop and I didn't put the two and two together. I was using shopping as a way to not feel. I didn't have the awareness to be able to name in my body what was actually going on for me. And so I'd just shop. So, I've been able to transcend that. I've been able to heal that. And now I just shop because, I like that, or it's something practical. I'm not doing it to get a hit, It would give me an adrenaline hit. It would give me a high. And that is like that for a lot of addictions. And I've also, of course, had to work on the sugar one, the coffee one. I don't drink coffee at all. I limit my alcohol to generally just, a couple of drinks a week because, again, I lived on adrenaline. I mean, that's another addiction, is the adrenaline addiction. That started way back. If I mow the lawn, if I clean my room, if I help with dinner, if I lay the table, all of that, then you might give me some love. I might be seen. So the more I do, the more love I might get. And when you don't get a lot of love, well, I'll work more. So that was the pattern. And so that's been a lot of my work, is to unravel that pattern. I don't have to do to seek love. So yeah, many different parts to that. Being able to understand that, I think, is so important.
There'll be lots of nodding heads for that one too, including mine.
Incredible, isn't it?
I'm working on my Pepsi Max addiction right now. Not very well.
They do keep coming in. Like, you've got to be so aware.
They
Like,
do.
yeah, it's like you don't just get there and you're all sorted. Like, how? It's daily practice, all of it, isn't it?
Your book made me really think about my shopping. Is it a problem? Do I really need that thing? Are we asking me or are we asking my husband?
Yeah. I still love clothes and nice things, but I'm not doing it to get a hit now. It's totally different. And I have a budget and I stay in it. It hasn't got me. I choose because I know what I like and I know what I value. Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to a point where you decided to search for your biological father, and the means through which to get his name was really only, it sort of narrowed down to be through your biological mother. So you did end up having some contact with her. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So it was actually my youngest son who said, Mum, you've always taught us to ask the question, why don't you just ring her? This is my biological mother. Hadn't even dawned on me. I thought, well, yeah, he's right. So I did. I picked up the phone and I said, hi, it's Helen, from Brisbane. And, I could hear her mind, her heart, clunk, clunk, clunk. I gave her a moment. Oh, she was like a frightened little old lady. And I said, look, I'm just ringing because I want to find my biological father. And I said, I either have to change the Adoption Act, which I've tried, but that's a bit harder, or
It's a little hard, that one.
yes, it is. I did contemplate it. I sent out some emails because I thought, well, that might be a bit easier. But of
Yeah.
course, no. And then the other was, they said, contact your biological mother. So she said, and she gave me his name, and she said, I do hope you've had a good life. I remember just sobbing, and I won't drop into it now because it could open that up. But I remember just thinking, wow. And so for that moment, in our lives, the two of us joined for a moment there. She was crying and I was crying. Yeah. And, gosh, I can feel it coming in. Incredible, isn't it?
It's under the surface all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'll just blow my nose. Yeah. She said to me, I wish you well. And I remember, I think I said thank you or something along that line. But I mean, the conversation was all of 2 minutes. And I thought, you know what, if that's all she can give me, thank you.
And she gave you your father's name?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if I had the spelling correct. And I also wasn't sure if I had the month of his birthday correct. But anyway, hunted the adoption place again with his name, with his birthday. But there was a part of me that was sort of starting to, we'll call it accept. Accept, okay, this is the card I've been dealt. Tried, I think it was for a couple of years, sent off different emails. I thought he could be in Scotland, he could be here. And then I just sort of almost had a heart to heart with myself and go, okay, let's just, the line finishes here. And there was sort of a real acceptance around that. And it has stayed with me, which is great. I know there was a defining moment with my biological mother when it was before I started reaching out to the siblings. I thought, well, if I can't find her, I'll have to find me. And that's when I started working with a counsellor. It was like, oh, okay, she's not going to be able to help me. Who's going to be able to help me? Well, I have to. Yeah, that was, a really defining moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember as a young girl, I was 19 when I met my mother, but prior to that, the fear around reaching out and maybe being rejected. And I used to think, I don't think I could survive that. And even after I met her, I used to think, I don't think I could survive if she hadn't wanted to
Yeah.
meet me. But through the courage of other people sharing their stories, I now know I could have. And there is a path forward through that. And, whatever we're dealt is where we find our way through. Yeah.
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 Absolutely. Yeah.
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 Can I just circle back to your adoptive mother again? You actually spent some time with her before she died, after a lifetime of distance, really. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's something that has warmed my heart because it was right at nearly the end of her life. We didn't know it was. She had a bit of illness, and I remember we were called to Wellington because that's where she was going to be operated on, and got the flight in, and it got cancelled. And Lily, my sister, was also there. So we drove up together from Wellington up to the Hawke's Bay, and I spent 4 or 5 days there. So every day going in, and this one particular time, it was the very last time I saw my mum. And I remember sitting next to her in the hospital, next to her bed, and just having a beautiful connection. I don't know whether it was me and I had let go of all resistance or she had, but there was just, I very much energetically connect with people, and I felt I could never connect with her. My relationship with her was very difficult. I was always trying to seek her approval, but I never really knew the woman. I really did not know her. I couldn't have any deeper meaningfuls with her. I am quite a deep emotional person, I've discovered. But when I was around her, I could never share that with her. But this particular moment sitting with her at the hospital was just absolutely beautiful. It was not, I did not know it would be the last time, but I sensed her life was coming to an end quite soon. So just to have that time with her was really, really special. Yeah. But to have only ever had that time, I can't ever really recall any other times where I've energetically just felt really comfortable. I never felt comfortable with her, and I could never actually share that with her. Yeah, very complex woman, a very, I think, courageous, strong woman. I mean, to adopt 10 children, and the complexities of all the different cultures is massive. But she was intriguing. I would love to have got to know her. But I just don't think she didn't let me in. Yeah. Apart from that very last time.
It's interesting you say, though, you wondered from your side, like for me, I always felt my adoptive mother smothering, wanting more and more. And I always kept myself very much away from her. Like I feel like she doesn't know me at all. Any part of me, I kept anything soft and vulnerable, completely shut off from her. And I'm still unpacking the why of that, whether it was something in her or something innate in adoption. The unsafety of a mother or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel any of that through your relationship with your adoptive mother at all?
Not really. I was scared of her, if I'm really honest. I was scared of her. And particularly when you're younger, you want to know that you're going to get food. There was a lot of fear there. She definitely softened as she got older, but because I had moved away, I'd made that choice at 18, 19 to move to Australia. It was only, I'd come back every year, every 18 months. So it's not like, at the moment I'm creating an adult relationship with my children because they live down the road, and even the one down in Tassie, but I never had that with my mother for as long as I can remember. When I would go home a couple of weeks out, I would almost revert to a child, and I would, become almost childlike. And so I'd go home and be in that role. I didn't bring adult Helen with me. I went to the child state. And then when they would come and visit, and good on them, I mean, that took a lot of money and energy and time to come and visit me, particularly every time I had a baby. But I would revert to a child. I'd go to the child state. To the very last visit, I remember they came and I was sick for about a week and a half, and I stayed in bed for the whole time. They got to know my husband at the time very well, but I stayed in bed. Now, look, it was all psychological, and I remember her asking me later on the phone, Helen, do you think it was psychological that you got sick? And I couldn't say to her, yes, it is. I didn't have the courage. Yeah, I kept it all very well hidden. Yeah, very interesting as I'm sort of reflecting. I haven't even thought about that for years.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just looking at everything that you've lived through, Helen, what do you understand now about yourself that you didn't understand back then?
Your sense of self is the most important thing. And I want to touch on Lily. She's the one who has sort of got me over the line to get that. I think as adoptees, we are all looking for that sense of self and that sense of belonging and within yourself. So, I could talk about embodiment. I didn't even know what that was. I just knew I was searching for something. But 4 years ago, Lily is the one, I'm 10 years old. She's Samoan and got the beautiful black curly hair and that soul connection when I was 10. So 4 years ago, she took her life. And in that, so when Owen took his life, I didn't know what to do. So I put it in a box. But when Lily took her life, I knew exactly what to do. And I knew nobody else could do it for me. And there's one pivotal point where I took myself away, and I got well nourished in a beautiful sort of retreat place where I just allowed myself to be with the pain. And I describe it, it's really hard to even put into words, but it's like I plummeted in and I landed and I stayed. So I'm in my body now, whereas I wasn't previously. And I won't drop into it because I will get emotional, but that is the gift that my sister Lily has given me. And that's why I had to write my book, because I thought that's what I've been goddamn looking for. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was all outside of myself. It's not. What I was looking for was to come home to myself and stay. So I now know how to regulate my emotions. I now know how to give myself self-compassion. I mean, sometimes I still get back into those old ways of doing. But the embodiment, I can't even describe it. Like, I'm in my body now. I'm there. I've got me. And that's what I was always searching for. So that's the gift my sister has given me. And yeah, does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, it's perfect sense. It's kind of where
Yeah.
I'm coming out in my life now. It's all those things that are realizing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, realizing that the external things you kept looking for and stuffing in, they weren't ever going to fill it up. It's like a healing from inside out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's I think like identity is such a difficult thing, you know, feeling at home in a space, knowing what you like, knowing who you are, being able to stand in that and be sure about it. It's such a challenging thing with being adopted, you know. And you can look around behind me as I've like slowly figured out what I like and surrounded myself with it. And those they're really important. They're things they're like they don't look like much, but they're structural things around me that reflect back to me who I am. And they're really important. Yeah.
I'm hearing you.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, your security of your home and all, like, I can look at all the little things and they've all got stories, but they give me my identity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I love how you call jigsaw because that's what it's about. It's like we're trying to work out the jigsaw of where we fit. But ultimately, the biggest thing I've learned is not to self-abandon myself. I've actually started a Facebook group and it's called Adopting Finding Freedom, because that is what we're trying to do, isn't it? Is find freedom within ourselves. And so it's all of this inner work. And now where I'm at, the grief and the loss, like when I wrote that book, I did not realize it was a book of grief. Writing that book was so therapeutic for me on so many levels because I was sharing myself out to the world, you know, and that as an adoptee, this is all of me. You see me now. Whereas when you've been a chameleon, you're very good at putting the performance on or whatever, to be liked. Whereas I cannot self-reject. I actually feel it in my body if I'm being untrue. Like as I'm doing this interview with you, I'm in my body. I can feel my bottom on the chair. I can feel my feet. I'm in my body. Is this my truth? Where I go back to other years of, I've done podcasts and talks and it's almost like I was talking up here. I wasn't
Yeah.
in the body, but I didn't know. So I'm not judging myself, but it's a journey, isn't it?
That's it. I think one of the things too I've discovered over the last few years is I no longer do things out of a sense of obligation. Like I think I've spent most of my life doing things I was obliged to do. And I've started running everything I do through a filter now of why am I wanting to do this? Is it because I want to do it or is it because I'm feeling obliged? And if it pings up obliged, it's a no, I'm not doing it.
I
Um,
love that. So true, isn't it? That obligation and pressure. And it's just, we're just so used to doing that. Yes. Yeah, I constantly question because my body will constantly let me know. Like,
yeah.
no,
Yeah, it
no.
holds all the answers. It lets you
Yeah.
know when things not sitting
Yes.
right.
But it's trusting. And if you think about it, we've had an interruption to trust. And
Yeah.
that's the most fundamental piece is to that self-trust with yourself. You don't need to look outside of yourself for your answers.
Yeah.
That's what's so beautiful. Yeah.
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 So your lived experience has now shaped the work that you do now with others, which you were just sort of talking about. So I'm wondering if you could leave us with some wisdom, I guess, for anyone who's listening and might be feeling disconnected from themselves or questioning their worth. What would you like for them to hear today?
That's a good question. Keep coming back to yourself. I think the first place to start is awareness. So having awareness about what you're feeling and what you're thinking. So bringing it right back because, I do relationship counseling, but I also do individual coaching and counseling. But it's more about your sense of self and your relationship with yourself. I mean, that's the most important one, isn't it? Not to self-abandon or self-reject yourself. It is about empowering yourself. I talk about the 7 areas of life, empowerment in those 7 areas of life. And I'm in a really good chapter. but it's taken a long time to get to this. So keep going. And if you can't do it on your own, find someone to work with to just keep you on track, but keep going, keep going. I have worked with that many different people over the years to keep, it's a bit, we're like an onion, aren't we? You keep peeling your layers back to get, because when you feel that true core within yourself and that true sense of self, I mean, what price do you put on that? Yeah. Just keep
Wise
going.
words.
Yeah.
Helen, can you tell us the name of your book and where people can get a copy if they want to read it or, as I did, listen to it? Yeah.
Yes. So Inner Wealth, From Pain to Purpose. Look, it's on Amazon. It's on my website, powerofchange.com.au. Where else is it? Yeah, you can get the audio. That's all on my website. Also, a little secret, you can get it on Spotify at no cost if you have premium. So you don't have to pay for the audio. Because, I did it for people to get their own ahas from. So that's, it was my sister Lily. I mean, I didn't know I was going to write this. It was my sister who very much drove me. And one thing I haven't tapped into, I think spirituality as an adoptee is massive, is finding your beliefs around that. For me as a little girl, it was being in nature. So for me, I trust universe. And, the cards we're dealt, they're for a reason. It's for us to evolve and work out why we're here. I now know why I'm here is to inspire other people to work through their stuff. I think that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing so authentically, deeply, honestly, and the generosity in what you've shared as well today, Helen. It's been amazing. And I know it's going to have an impact on a lot of people who are listening.
Thank you so much.
And to everyone tuning in, every adoption story is different. And even though there are many common themes, every story matters. And if you're looking for support, resources, or simply a space to be heard, please know that Jigsaw Queensland is here for you. If you'd like to support the podcast or just leave a review or share this episode, get in touch as well. We love to hear from you to let us know what you thought of an episode, or you can leave a comment on episodes as well, because I know the people we interview like to hear about those comments as well. And if you have your own story that you'd like to share, head to the Adopt Perspective page of the Jigsaw Queensland website and fill out a prospective guest form. Thank you again for listening. I'm Jo Sparrow, President of Jigsaw Queensland. Take care and bye for now.